Hello, welcome to another video, and today's an interesting exercise that you can use, especially if you have issues with like one side of the hip. So the common thing is like a lateral pelvic tilt. I get a lot of questions about that, and issues like with weakness on the glutes on one side or even a stiff hip. This is one way that you can use an exercise to help you with that, very similar to the suitcase carry that we talk about quite a lot. So I'll play the video for you to give you an idea what it looks like. So really it's just a simple Romanian deadlift, but the weight is unevenly placed, as you can easily see here. So what this does, it's quite unusual when you first try it. So you have to, it takes a couple of goes and you have to keep it fairly light to begin with, but what it really sort of overemphasizes like a couple of things. So firstly, when Dylan's bending down on this side with the weight on this right side, obviously the load is going to be heavily placed on the glutes on the right hand side. So this right hip is going to be really overpowered because all the weight is basically tipping him down. So the strength on this leg is over exaggerated. So it has to basically push back against the gravity of the barbell. Now the beauty of the other side though is when he's pulling up, so I'll just take that back for you for a minute. So as he's pulling back, pushing back up, the obliques and the QL on the opposite side are working really hard to basically perform the role of his body sort of flexing, because it's very likely that the bar is going to tip over, so everything on this side is going to be overstretched. So to maintain this very level barbell, there's a massive contraction on the opposite side, which is, like I said before, very similar to what we see with the suitcase carry. All right, so this is you can see now how this could be quite a useful exercise when you're training through a weakness on one side that's not performing its role correctly. So, and if you're going to try this out, you may be surprised in what you find, thinking one side is going to be quite strong, and when you do it, it's like there's a noticeable difference. All right, so you can get a rear view perspective of this now. So usually you'll see a lot of compensation if it's a weak hip, and I'll show you another video in a second of a different exercise you could use for that. But this is one way that you can just practice this bending action as opposed to the walking or the gait thing that we see with the suitcase carry. And you can get a good side-on visual here of Dylan's form on the Romanian deadlift. So he's got a great technique here. So just that neutral curve sits right back into the hip really, really well. So this left hip now is doing a hell of a lot of work. The other one's still working, but not as much because obviously it's unevenly loaded. So like I said, the opposing side of the core is actually working extremely hard. All right, so quite a clever exercise you can use. Obviously you're going to have to make the weight significantly lighter than if you had a well-balanced deadlift as such. You also need to be sure that you can just do a normal deadlift before you can progress to this. I wouldn't use this as my beginning exercise. I'd want to get the execution of it right. This might be something that is a transition from two legs to one leg, because obviously when there's significant weakness with one leg, it can be too big a jump, and that's where we might use several other versions of things to do that. But this mimics that action, and sort of like it's almost a 1.5 legs, I suppose you could say. But yeah, a lot of the work around the core and the trunk, trying to maintain that level alignment, is arguably where the most of the benefit from this exercise comes, not necessarily the leg strength itself. It's more about how they're interacting with each other to maintain postural control and postural alignment. All right, so quite a great exercise for those out there who are struggling with that lateral pelvic tilt or a specific hip problem on one side. All right, yeah, I'll show you a second video in a minute that sort of follows on from this one.